Welcome, friends. And on the first day of unleavened bread, when they sacrificed the Passover lamb, his disciples said to him, "Where will you have us go and prepare for you to eat the Passover?" And he sent two of his disciples and said to them, "Go into the city, and a man carrying a jar of water will meet you. Follow him, and wherever he enters, say to the master of the house, 'The teacher says, where is my guest room, where I may eat the Passover with my disciples?' And he will show you a large upper room furnished. There prepare for us." And the disciples set out and went to the city and found it just as he had told them, and they prepared the Passover. And when it was evening, he came with the 12, and they were reclining at the table and eating. And Jesus spoke to them. And as they were eating, he took bread, and after blessing it, broke it, and gave it to them, and said, "Take, this is my body." And he took a cup, and when he had given thanks, he gave it to them, and all drank of it. And he said to them, "This is my blood of the covenant, which is poured out for many." What if this room was a large dining room where we could all sit at tables and chairs and eat a meal together? Sometimes I like to envision the Lord's Supper that way, like it was in the upper room between Jesus and the disciples. A bit like a family gathering where all are invited to join in, where we gather in an upper room furnished with tables and chairs, and where there's enough food for everyone to share, and where the Lord himself is among us as he was on the night of his crucifixion. And in that setting, if it was handled that way, I think some things about what we do here would feel really different. The truth would be the same, but the feel would be very different, wouldn't it? From how we normally do this sitting in the pews as we do. And I think some of those things would be really wonderful. I think they would remind us of a couple of important truths that we know, but we would feel it in a different way if it could be in that setting. I think if we set it up that way, that it would feel, and we would realize in a profound way, how much this is a shared thing. I remember during COVID when all the lockdowns and all the procedures were in place and we weren't passing the trays back and forth. And I remember several of the church members here saying it just feels like something is missing when we don't pass the trays to one another and move the service of this through the group here. We all just have our own little individual thing, you peel it off. And I think they were right about that. And isn't it kind of strange, at least it is to me, that such a simple movement could have any impact at all? That just the movement of passing something between us could actually mean something. But I know that it does. And you know how? Because it's November, and all of the food company commercials this month are going to picture us in what type of setting? Family dinner, where people are passing plates of food around the table to each other. Why do they do that? Because there's something meaningful and communal about that, isn't it? There's something being shared there. When a family is sitting at the table together and they are passing food around to everybody at the table and there's plenty for everyone and everybody's happy to be together for this special meal. Can I tell you that I think we would realize in a really wonderful way the significance of that act? Now, I'm grateful that at least we have a taste of it here in the way that we do communion on Sundays. That what essentially we're doing is the person next to you is waiting for you to pass the plate down, pass the bread, pass the juice. What we're doing is we're sharing in a family meal together as the Lord did at the table with his disciples that night. And I'm glad that we have that glimpse of what it's like to remind us that this is a family and friends kind of thing. And we share this important meal where everyone is welcome. And we are so glad that you came. But I got to tell you that even more than that, I think if we were sitting in a scene somewhat like the upper room with the disciples, I think we would realize in a whole new way the centrality of Jesus himself to this whole experience. Story from my childhood. When I was growing up, most of my family lived in one small town. There were a few exceptions, but most of us lived in one small town. And so one of the benefits of that was every other Sunday afternoon, we would get together at my grandparents' house, and we would have Sunday dinner after church at their house. Now, just to clarify, Sunday dinner means lunchtime. Sunday supper is evening time, okay? Just want to make sure you know what I'm talking about there, okay? Dinner is dinner all the other days of the week, but Sunday dinner is lunchtime. Now you know. Okay, that said, we would get together and we would set out tables in a big long run all the way through the kitchen and the living room, and everybody would sit down, and the noise was incredible. The talking, the playing, the joking around, the catching up on the news in the community, all of that. There was so much of that happening. It was a lot of noise, and it was really wonderful. But what I remember most about it was my grandpa always sat at the end of the table. He always sat at the head of the table. And he never made himself out to be important in any way. Grandpa is one of the most humble humans you'd ever want to meet. But we were in his house, at his table, and we were his children. And we were all welcome. And when I think about those Sunday dinners, Grandpa is the most important figure in the mental picture that I have. Everybody mattered because they mattered to Grandpa. Grandpa is the most important figure in that setting. And can I tell you, brothers and sisters, that if we could gather as the disciples did in the upper room and enjoy this and a meal in that kind of way, we would realize who is clearly the most important person in the room. And it's Jesus. Because we are in his house, we are at his table, and because of him, we are the Father's children. That's pretty special when you think about it, isn't it? Isn't that pretty special for us to all know that all of us matter because of him, and to know that he's with us and that he is here to welcome all of us. I have kind of wondered sometimes in my life if I would ever feel quite so welcomed anywhere again as I felt at Grandma and Grandpa's table, where everybody was welcome, everybody was appreciated, everybody was respected. But I find myself a little bit like the psalmist who wrote number 73. When I tried to understand all of this, it troubled me until I went into the house of God. When I come into the house of God, a gathering of his people where he is being worshiped and his communion is being shared, I find that I am welcomed and I do belong at this meal that we share. I think, y'all, that that's what we're supposed to understand here. And maybe we would be able to feel it on a whole different level if we changed the configuration of how we were sitting and sharing all of this, but we're not going to, so let's just appreciate it in the setting that we have. Let's appreciate the gravity of what it's like knowing that we are together in this, around his table in a spiritual way, and we know who's the most important person in the room. The one who sits at the head of the table, and the one whose generous grace is the reason we are here. There's a song that I have come to really love lately, and I'd like to read some of its lyrics to you. I hope that they help you feel the specialness of communion as we eat and drink today. These are the lyrics. Welcome, friends. I'm so glad you came. It wouldn't be the same without you here. Step inside, sit down for a while, drink in all the smiles and the tears. Help yourself. It's all on the house. Pass the plate around and don't be shy. Have your fill. There's plenty here to share. Everything prepared with us in mind. Welcome, friends, for now we share a name, a family of strangers, one and all. Gathered here, neighbors for a time, let us fight a different fight beyond these walls. Whatever you brought here tonight, we will feast and enjoy the light. drink in every cup of joy and grief. Only God knows why we all stumble in this dining hall, searching for the food that we most need. But let us gather round the table. Come and eat.